English Leap Podcast.
From Speak English with Class.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Leap Podcast. I'm Lucy and I'm so glad you're here with us today. Whether you're a longtime listener or tuning in for the first time, we're excited to have you.
That's right. Hey, hi, I'm Daniel, and today we've got a really interesting topic lined up that I think will resonate with a lot of people. Lucy, how's everything going on your end?
It's been a good day, Daniel. I'm feeling really pumped for today's episode because betrayal is one of those things we've all experienced in one way or another, but it's not something we always talk about.
Exactly. Betrayal is a tough pill to swallow, whether it's from a close friend, a family member, or even someone at work. It can shake up how we trust people, and that's what makes today's conversation so important.
Absolutely, and we want to dive into what betrayal feels like, how it affects relationships, and how people cope with it. We've got some personal stories, reflections, and even a few tips on how to move forward when trust is broken.
That's right. But before we go any deeper, let's take a moment to welcome our vocabulary expert, Charlotte. She'll help us break down some of the key words and phrases we'll be using today. Charlotte, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to helping everyone understand key terms related to our topic. Stick around, because I'll be explaining some vocabulary at the end of the podcast.
Thanks, Charlotte. We're happy to have you on board. Now, back to our topic, betrayal. It's such a personal and emotional experience, and it affects everyone differently. Lucy, have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you?
Yeah, unfortunately I have. I think we all go through it at some point in our lives. There was a time when a close friend of mine shared something very personal that I had confided in her. It felt like my trust was completely shattered.
That sounds really tough. It's always harder when it's someone close to you, someone you never expect to hurt you.
Exactly. I wasn't just hurt by what she did, but it also made me question every other relationship in my life. Trust, once it's broken, is so hard to rebuild, you know?
I completely get that. Betrayal doesn't just affect your relationship with that one person. It impacts how you trust others going forward. I had that feeling in the workplace once, when a coworker I trusted took credit for something I worked really hard on. It was a big project, and when they took the spotlight, I felt completely blindsided.
Ouch. Workplace betrayal can be just as hurtful, especially when you're counting on someone to have your back in a professional setting. It's like it hits you out of nowhere.
Exactly. And what makes it worse is that it changes how you interact with people in the future. You become more guarded, and it takes a lot of time to rebuild that trust.
Yeah, betrayal forces you to put up walls. But it's also a learning experience. It teaches you who to trust and what boundaries to set moving forward.
Definitely. It's a painful lesson, and that brings us to our next point, the emotional impact of betrayal. When you're betrayed, it's not just a simple case of being hurt. It messes with your trust, your self-esteem, and even your sense of security in relationships.
Right. Betrayal makes you question everything. Your choices, your judgment, and even your value in the relationship. For me, the hardest part wasn't just losing that friend, but losing the confidence I had in myself for trusting her in the first place.
That's such a common experience. Betrayal can lead to self-doubt. You start wondering, was I too naive? Should I have seen this coming? It becomes a cycle of questioning your own judgment.
And that emotional weight can follow you into other relationships. You become more cautious, more reluctant to trust, and sometimes you start seeing betrayal where there isn't any, just because you're afraid of getting hurt again.
Exactly. It's like you're always on edge, expecting something bad to happen, even in relationships where there's no actual reason to doubt anyone. That fear can stop you from truly connecting with others.
Yes, it's exhausting emotionally. You're trying to protect yourself from being hurt again, but at the same time, you're missing out on deeper connections because you've built these walls. And those walls aren't easy to bring down once they're up.
That's the hardest part, isn't it? Learning to trust again, but also being smart about it. You don't want to close yourself off, but you also don't want to get hurt the same way twice. It's a balance between protecting yourself and staying open to new relationships.
Exactly. And part of that balance is recognizing when it's okay to let go of the fear and when to establish boundaries that protect your emotional health. You can still trust people, but with more awareness of who truly deserves that trust.
It's definitely a process. And I think that leads us into the next point: why people betray others. It's easy to focus on the person who was hurt, but understanding why betrayal happens is a big part of moving forward.
Definitely. People often betray others not out of pure malice, but because of fear, insecurity, or even self-preservation. For example, someone might betray a friend because they're afraid of losing something, whether it's status, a relationship, or even just the upper hand in a situation.
Yeah, and in a professional context, it could be driven by ambition. People betray their colleagues to get ahead, to make themselves look better, or to gain favor with a boss. It's often about selfish motives, but there's usually more complexity to it.
Exactly. And sometimes betrayal isn't even intentional. It can come from people who are emotionally immature, who don't fully realize the damage they're causing because they're only focused on their immediate needs. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps to see that betrayal can come from a place of personal weakness rather than strength.
That's such a key point. Betrayal is often about the person doing the betraying. They might be dealing with their own insecurities, jealousy, or fear of failure. Understanding that doesn't take away the hurt, but it can make it a little easier to see that the betrayal wasn't always about you, but about their internal struggle.
Exactly. It helps you separate the act of betrayal from your own self-worth. You realize that sometimes people act out of their own flaws or fears, and it's not always a reflection of you or your actions. But even when we understand why someone betrays us, it doesn't mean the emotional damage is any less. And that brings us to the next point. How do we move forward?
That's right. Understanding why it happens is one part, but healing and moving on is a whole other challenge.
Exactly. Moving forward after betrayal is tough, and it's not a one-size-fits-all process. For some, it starts with forgiveness, not just forgiving the other person, but forgiving yourself for trusting them in the first place. You can't control other people's actions, but you can control how you respond and heal.
That's right. And forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean letting that person back into your life. It's more about letting go of the anger and resentment so you're not carrying that weight around with you. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional baggage.
Yeah, and setting boundaries is crucial too. After betrayal, it's natural to want to protect yourself. Part of moving forward is learning how to rebuild trust without losing yourself in the process. You can be open to new relationships, but with a clearer understanding of what you're willing to accept and what you won't tolerate.
Absolutely. And moving forward also means reflecting on what you've learned from the experience. Betrayal can be a painful teacher, but it shows you what's important in relationships: honesty, loyalty, and communication. It helps you understand your values more clearly.
Yes, and it's important to remember that healing takes time. There's no rush to get over betrayal. It's about taking the steps to regain your peace and rebuild trust, not just in others, but in yourself. Trusting your own judgment again is key.
And in the end, moving forward is about growth. It's about using the experience to become stronger, setting healthier boundaries, and being more mindful about who you let into your life. It's a journey, but one that ultimately leads to a better version of yourself.
All right, before we wrap up this conversation, let's bring Charlotte back in to break down some of the key terms we've discussed throughout the episode. Charlotte, over to you.
Thanks, Lucy. Let's go over a few key terms that came up in your discussion. Betrayal. Betrayal happens when someone you trust breaks that trust, often in a hurtful way. For example, she felt a deep sense of betrayal when her friend shared her secret. It's all about the violation of trust. Guarded. When someone becomes guarded, they are more cautious about opening up to others because they've been hurt before. For example, after being betrayed by her colleague, she became more guarded at work. Boundaries. Boundaries are limits we set in relationships to protect ourselves emotionally. For example, he set clear boundaries with his friends after being betrayed to avoid being hurt again. Self-esteem. This is how you feel about yourself, your confidence and self-worth. For example, her self-esteem dropped after being betrayed by someone she trusted deeply. Self-doubt. This happens when you question your own decisions or abilities. For example, after the betrayal, he was filled with self-doubt, constantly questioning his judgment. Naive. This describes someone who is inexperienced or overly trusting. For example, he felt naive for trusting someone who ended up betraying him. Suspicious. Being suspicious means feeling cautious or distrustful, often because you're worried someone might hurt or deceive you. For example, after the betrayal, she became suspicious of anyone who got close to her. Malice. Malice refers to the desire to harm someone or act with ill intent. For example, they acted out of malice, hoping to get revenge for what happened. Self-preservation. This means doing something to protect yourself from harm or loss, often at the expense of others. For example, he betrayed his friend out of self-preservation, fearing he would lose his job if he didn't. Ambition. Ambition is a strong desire to achieve something, often with great effort. For example, her ambition to succeed in her career led her to betray her colleague. Insecurity. Insecurity means lacking confidence or feeling uncertain about yourself. For example, his insecurities made him betray his friend, thinking he wasn't good enough without taking shortcuts. Emotional immaturity. This refers to when someone hasn't fully developed the emotional awareness to understand how their actions affect others. For example, her emotional immaturity caused her to betray her partner, not realizing the long-term damage it would cause. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is when you let go of anger or resentment towards someone who has wronged you. For example, she decided to forgive her friend, not to excuse the betrayal, but to release herself from the anger. Emotional baggage. This refers to unresolved emotional issues or pain from past experiences. For example, he realized he was carrying emotional baggage from the betrayal that was affecting his new relationships. Growth. Growth in this context means personal development, often as a result of learning from a difficult experience. For example, the betrayal helped her grow stronger and become more aware of who she lets into her life. These words are key to understanding the different aspects of betrayal, from the initial hurt to the complex emotions that follow, helping us make sense of the entire journey from betrayal to healing.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. That really helps break down and clarify the important concepts we've discussed today.
Yeah, it's always great to get a deeper understanding of the words that reflect what we go through emotionally.
Wow, we've covered a lot today, and hopefully it's given you some insight into betrayal, why it happens, and how to move forward.
Exactly. It's never easy, but learning from these experiences helps you rebuild trust and stronger relationships.
Before we go, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced betrayal, or are you currently trying to move forward from it? Leave your thoughts in the comments, share your story, and let's keep this conversation going.
Exactly. Your stories could help others who are dealing with similar experiences, and we'll be reading and responding to your comments.
Thanks again for joining us today on the English Leap podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this.
Yes, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. We've got a lot more insightful conversations coming your way.
Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay strong, and keep learning. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone, and thanks for tuning in.
Your progress doesn't end here. To continue advancing your English skills, click on the next video or explore the additional videos we've thoughtfully selected for you.